This little demo video is to show you and talk about what is called an ambient occlusion pass or render. And what an ambient occlusion render can do is you can set this up in your Photoshop, your PSD shader networks, or you can also put it into your regular Maya shader networks. Or also you can also render them separately and just bring them into whatever compositing program like Photoshop or After Effects or whatever compositing software you are using. But what an ambient occlusion will do is give you another level of realism. Now if I'm just going to, I set up a little scene here, and I added some procedural textures here, and I'm just going to do a render just to show you what's going on. This is just a plain old color render, and once it renders a little bit more, you can see that there are some sections here that have that aren't affected by the light. I just have a regular area light, and it's going to be casting a shadow on this sphere against this plane and the ground plane. And if you look here, you can see that there isn't really any kind of, it's very flat. There isn't any shadows or reflections here to define where this corner is. We have a nice shadow from the sphere here. You can see it a little better once that opens up, once this renders fully. But as you can see, there's not really a good sense of, there's a flatness to this render here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a ambient occlusion render. Again, you can set this up in your render passes or your shader network, but I'm just going to do it separately just to kind of show you what you can do. And you can do this on some of your renders that you're doing for your projects. I'm going to save that just so we can come back to it. And let's open up our Hypershade, and I have my nodes here that are that the materials and the surfaces for my scene here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm rendering with Mental Ray. I have the Mental Ray plugin, so open up the Mental Ray surfaces here, and I'm going to go into Mental Ray textures. And I'm just going to find this MIB ambient occlusion. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to give me an ambient occlusion node here. And so what you're going to find out, what you're going to do, excuse me, is you're going to assign this ambient occlusion node. I'm just going to assign it to the default Lambert 1 surface here. So I'm going to middle mouse drag it to that node there and just default, just like that, and it's going to turn black. Now with this ambient occlusion node selected, I'm just going to open up the network here, and we have a shading group, and we have that ambient occlusion node set to that, and we can do some, there are some things that we can do in the attributes editor a little later, but I'm just going to show you how to apply these. So I've already done my color render, and I'm going to select that Lambert. I'm just going to drag those over and apply those to that material. I applied it to the ball, to that back wall, and to the floor there. Okay, so now when I do a render, and this might take a little bit, this is going to be a little quicker than the color render, you can see what an ambient occlusion render is going to look like. The first thing you're going to notice is that there's a little bit of shadow suggested being cast here on the floor, being cast on from this this wall surface, and again you're seeing a little bit from the ball here, and that's what an ambient occlusion will look like. It's just a black and white shaded image. Let's open up the Hypershade again, select that, go into the attributes for that ambient occlusion. You've got a few little you've got some, first I'm going to save that so you can see the color and the ambient occlusion. I'm just going back and forth between those two renders there. Great. So I'm gonna do another little. I'm gonna show you what these settings here, the samples. If you notice from that, let's just show you that again. Open that up. See how it's kind of grainy and whatnot, and that's not really. You might not really want that. So that's the samples, and you can up the sample to like 160. Now, if you do that, it's going to add to the render time, just to let you know. But it'll give you better quality. The spread, that is sort of the diffusion of the shadow. If I were to just make that 0 and do a render. First, I'm going to bring this so it doesn't. I'm going to bring the sample back down to 16, just so it doesn't make a long render for this video. And let's do a render here, and I'll show you what the spread does. And it just makes a hard shadow, as you can see. And that's not really great. Now the shadow's different being cast from the light onto the ball, but as you can see, the ambient occlusion is showing just a hard shadow. That just gives you a very graphic indication of what's going on. So I'm going to bring that spread, that was 0.08, I'm just going to bring it to about 0.6. The maximum distance gives you units. Each Maya unit, it'll give you how much that spread will go. And let's just make it 10 just for the heck of it. And let's do another render. Oops, I pushed the wrong button there. And so you can just play around with these settings here, and you can see that that spread kind of made the ambient occlusion go away, which is not really what I wanted either. I kind of wanted that to be 0. Let's keep the spread to there. You can make it reflective, and you also have you can have an alpha channel as well. So basically what I want you to do, or you don't have to if you don't want to, is just to make a ambient occlusion and save that out as a separate render. You can save it out in animation and a layer, or you can save it out as a render and go into a compositing program or a graphic program like Photoshop. Now I already have one set up here. I have my color render and I have my ambient occlusion. So I brought these in together on top of each other and I made it an overlay. So I just put the ambient occlusion on top of the color render, and as you can see, what that does is it adds a little bit of realism. It gives it a layer of density or a layer of atmosphere. You can see what it is without it, and you can see it with the ambient occlusion, and you can play with the opacity of it. If you don't think it's too much, you can do that. You can play with the fill, which is a little bit like opacity, but gives you kind of just another adjustment like there. Also, you can do the same thing with the background. You can just play with these adjustments, but as you can see, it does add quite a bit of difference. And if you find that your renders are looking a little flat, if the shadows just aren't really doing what you wanted to do an ambient occlusion render, bring it into Photoshop and overlay them, and you can really get sort of a nice looking realistic render from that.